Hi, everyone. This is Dan Guinn with Francis Schaeffer Studies, and it's my privilege to introduce you to Watcher of the Watching World, a new series from Francis Schaeffer Studies that really seeks to emphasize the prescient thought of Francis Schaeffer's teachings. And so I know many of you are probably waiting for that first episode that we've been talking about, and we'll get to that soon. But I felt it would be appropriate to give you a little bit of an introduction to the series. I'm primarily wanted to emphasize what our intent is with this series, but then also to emphasize and clarify what it is not. And I just mentioned really what it is. It's to emphasize the prescient thought and teachings of Francis Schaeffer. Yet, what it is not is to try to assert that Dr. Schaeffer is a form of biblical prophet. In theological definition, a prophet was one who speaks for God, conveying the divine message, or directly appointed ambassador appointed by God. However, in addition to that, in my view, um, it's my view that the specific nature of the biblical prophet is also connected with the biblical canon, both the Old Testament and New Testament. And that canon of Scripture is closed. So let me state firmly that Dr. Schaeffer was not a biblical prophet in the sense of being tied with the biblical canon. And that's just in case anyone would wish to charge us with some form of heresy. It's just explicitly not our position. Explicitly not. However, at numerous times, I can't tell you how many times this has happened. Both laypersons and scholars alike have mentioned to us their opinion that Schaeffer was a prophet. And has always seemed to us that what they were referring to was really Schaeffer was a prophet in sort of the lowercase p class. It seems to us that that is really what their intent was, to not emphasize like a biblical prophet, but to say that Schaeffer was one that had his thumb on the pulse of culture and seemed to have an incredible and even perhaps a God-given insight into what was going to happen. And so he had insights on future events. He had a tremendous godliness and emphasis on truth. And those are what we would call a generalized definition of prophet, not a biblical prophet per se, but a prophet in with that lowercase p. Um, so if you were to go and look at some of those actual definitions, like the literal Hebrew nabi, which means a spokesman, the literal Greek prophetis, which can mean one who speaks forth. Okay. So, but it's an inspired teacher, proclaimer of the will of God, a foreteller or seer of future. So again, we're not emphasizing that he was a biblical prophet, but there is something to be said for some of the understandings that he had. And I believe, rather than even claiming that he was a prophet per se, and even in the lowercase sense, is that Schaeffer just had a tremendous gift of insight given to him by the Lord, and that his in the scope of his life, in the sovereignty of God, he was guided into so many different nuances and areas that gave him that dialing in, if you will, to the movements of culture. Specifically, his uh, he traveled quite a bit and spoke with different scholars all the way across the world. He studied just tremendously in many volumes, even in just generalized forms to like periodicals and things like that. He was following up on cultural leads. He was regularly pursuing and speaking to people about some of these things of interest. So he was dialed in that way as a scholar, as an academic in the loose sense, but then also had many people who came to L'Abri, who visited him over the years from various schools of thought from all over the world. And he regularly talked with these people, and it was just a natural part of his exploration and the understanding of where humanity was today. It gave him a tremendous insight. And also, in some ways, I think, in many ways, because he was seeing some of the things of the East and some of the things that were happening in the European world, he was seeing what would eventually transpire in the American world because, in some ways, were further along there. So there's a lot of nuance to this. But I think Schaeffer's own disciplines of conversation, of interacting with others, reading, writing, exploring, those things actually made him truly at another level when it comes to cultural analysis. And some of his understanding specifically of worldview that cultivated out of that became tremendously valuable because he could see through things more quickly than many of us do, even. So, what we look forward to doing is bringing some of that to light, bringing some of that prescient nature of his thought and teachings to light. Now, what are the benefits of that? Well, it's not just to look back and make Schaeffer look good. That's not what we're trying to do. It's to look back at what Schaeffer was contributing and telling us about what's happening today so that we could properly understand and cultivate new insights, even on the analysis that he brought forth. Because think about it, he was forecasting where we are today. So now, if we look at things where they are today and compare, we can see many of the things that he said came true. They give us a means to cultivate proper analysis ourselves. And that's what we hope to see. So I hope you'll take time to join us for these upcoming episodes in our new series, Watcher of the Watching World.